up talking briefly about notifying analysis to EFSA. So I think today I'd like to talk about the process for notifying new studies and new analysis under the rules of the EU's transparency regulation. Some background to start out with. The Transparency Regulation, also known as the Transparency Act, is an EU regulation which was introduced in March 2021. And the purpose of the new regulation was to increase the transparency of risk assessment in the food chain and to increase reliability, objectivity, and independence of scientific studies used to support these risk assessments. Can you give a bit of background as to how this transparency regulation came about?
Yeah, I think in part it's acknowledged that this was a reaction to past experience. And example that's often cited is that there was a citizens' initiative, a kind of a petition to ban the glyphosate weed killer, and the whole story around what was going on with that back in 2017, 2018, I suppose wasn't necessarily shrouded in mystery, but it showed that the lack of transparency in the process, which is, this transparency regulation is EFSA's reaction to that. A further obligation under this regulation is that applicants for a future health claim or a novel food submission are now required to get what is called a pre-application identification number and notify EFSA of any planned research and testing before it happens. That's the important thing here. You have to do that before it happens. And I think this frightens a lot of people, but it's a simple step. The pre-application ID, all it essentially does is link together the pieces of research that an applicant might then perform that could form part of a future submission.
The types of analysis and testing then that must be notified are defined as any research conducted or carried out under lab conditions, which I suppose could have quite a broad interpretation, and that does include in vitro and animal studies, stability analysis on the product itself, and then of course human clinical trials, which is what we've been talking about quite a bit over the last number of weeks. An easy way to know or to remember what's notifiable, for me anyway, is to think about whether it culminates in a certificate of analysis or a study report, so something like a clinical study report. However, an exception to this, as of I think August last year, EFSA did come out and say that routine batch analysis of production batches isn't necessarily notifiable or isn't notifiable to them in advance of conduct.
Yeah, that was an important clarification. But I think even as an applicant, you don't have any current plans to make a health claim or novel food submission or seek that opinion, it's good practice to obtain this pre-application ID and to do this notification. It doesn't commit you as an applicant to anything in the future. I think that's the important thing. But any study which you could potentially use and include in a future application should be pre-notified. And it just ensures that EFSA has this prior knowledge of all of the relevant bits of research which might support a future application. And that's really all it's about.
So I suppose even if you don't have current plans, as you said, to make a health claim or a novel food claim, there's potential consequences if you do decide the future, if that changes. So I suppose in order to future-proof the applications for your study or your analysis, we need to talk about those consequences. And if you don't complete that pre-notification prior to study start or prior to analysis, it could result in a time penalty, I understand, in the future. If you then subsequently, your plans change, you choose to make a health claim or novel food claim, as EFSA would need extra time then to review those analyses retrospectively.
Yeah, I think although these penalties haven't been sort of officially outlined anywhere, they are mentioned by EFSA. And it's thought that they could involve a delay, a time frame of about 6 months if you haven't gone through these notification steps.
I suppose notifying a study to EFSA is a simple step. And as you said, it doesn't necessarily indicate commitment to making a claim in the future. The information provided in the pre-notification is publicly available. However, the information needed for that pre-notification is quite high level. It's actually quite similar to what is included in a clinicaltrials.gov registration. So things around the study design, the objectives, the population.
That's really important, Shawnee. I mean, it is high level information that is necessary, and companies, applicants are very happy to do that for clinicaltrials.gov. So it shouldn't be any different to this. If you choose to pre-notify your study to EFSA, it is, as you said, a simple process. Firstly, you just register your company as an entity within the EFSA Connect portal on the web, and then it's a simple process. You register the study before it starts, which is the important thing, and that triggers a request to any third party laboratory or contractor consultant that's then delivering the work for you to co-notify the study, which is just a simple click of an email.
And I suppose before that simple click of the email, it's important for those third parties to have created a profile through the EFSA Connect in order to co-notify. And once that's done, it's actually very straightforward. Their contact for the entity receives the email, it's a couple of simple steps, and then that's them co-notified and registered on your notification. And as you said, pre-notification is completed through the EFSA Connect portal, and EFSA have published a guidance. There's been several YouTube webinars around how to do that, and they do have a detailed PDF document of the guidance for everything step by step, from the initial setting up an account right through to completing the pre-notification. And they've updated that several times, so we can place the link to the current user guide in the description for this video. Might be helpful for some people.
Yeah, absolutely.